On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, the OG and Anunoby Pascal Siakam Bowl is upon us, and we ask, just how terrible should Raptors fans feel about it? Plus a look at a couple more wing prospects who could help solve the problems left behind by our dearly departed big wings, Siakam and OG. All coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, May the 3rd, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a wonderful place to come and talk about the playoffs, talk about the draft, talk about what food you're cooking up at home. It's a great little family we got building around the show. And of course, there'll be plenty of commiserating, I'm sure, about OG and Anunoby versus Pascal Siakam in the second round of the NBA playoffs as the Knicks and Pacers will square off. More on that coming up in a little bit. But join us in the Discord, link in the description. It's free to join. As always, we would love to see you in there. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, all that good stuff. Always appreciated when you take the time to support the show. However you do it, it takes no time. It's free, and it makes me feel good and strokes my ego and boosts us up the algorithm. So please support it. You can also go to YouTube and support us there. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and get a heads up via push notification every single time the show is about to premiere or go live, so you never miss a second. You can join the live chat with the little sickos in there. And yeah, we would love to have you be part of all of that. So thanks in advance for doing so. And let's get to it. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go for free right now at the Google Play or App Store. Game on. All right. Let's get to it. On today's show, we're talking about Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby squaring off in round 2 of the playoffs. Then we got a couple of wing prospects to talk about who just might be there if the Toronto Raptors pick in the top 6, as we are continuing to live out the fantasy of the Raptors keeping their pick in the top 6 at the draft lottery, which is 9 days away. And yes, of course, my official party stance is I think you should want the Raptors to convey this pick, but there is, of course, a real chance they either move up in the lottery or hang out at number 6, and they're picking there. Actually, it seems like being at 6 based on the numbers and the actual projections is like the least likely outcome here. Most likely to be 7th overall, and then, there's like an equal percent chance they jump up to 1, 2, 3, or 4 as there is they stick at number 6. But either way, we'll continue to live out the world in which the Raptors keep their pick in the top 6 with a look at Cody Williams and Dalton Knecht coming up later on in the show. But let's get to it. The sort of topic du jour, I'm sure, today among Toronto Raptors fans after the New York Knicks put away the Philadelphia 76ers last night, 118-115 in game 6 of their extremely rad and cool series that I wanted more of, but maybe it's best for all of the ligaments of the players involved that there wasn't more of. Of course, the OG and Anunoby dunk late in that game, one of the sealing moments, and the Pacers will be taking on the Knicks in round 2. That's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know how much fun it'll be for the Pacers, honestly. I feel like the Knicks are kind of nasty and are going to make that into a miserable series for a Pacers team that likes to play like an open, free-flowing style of ball. Fascinated to see how it all plays out. But we will see Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, 2 guys these teams traded for in the middle of the season from your beloved Toronto Raptors, squaring off with one another. And look, it's going to be something. Zach Lowe talked about it on his podcast today with Howard Beck. This is going to be a topic of laughing and pointing, of conversation, of how did the Raptors give up these guys who are making serious contributions to their teams in the second round of the playoffs. And you got to be braced for it, right? It's going to happen. I think it probably is something where, I'm not going to relitigate the Pascal Siakam thing. I've done it a million times. I think it's a bad trade. I think it's a really, really bad trade. Every step of the way on the Pascal trade was handled terribly, from the ghosting him over the summertime to the bringing him into the season, clearly not wanting him on the team, to the not really responding to the information in front of them about, hey, maybe this Pascal Scotty thing's actually kind of working, and adding Quickly and Barrett to the team totally changes the dynamics that weren't working before, and just kind of sticking with the telegraphed trade of Pascal Siakam that the team really seemed to want to do from like the day they lost Fred VanVleet and onward. All of it bad. The return, 3 meh picks and Bruce Brown and a pick that became Kelly Olynyk that could have become Kelly Olynyk via the 31st pick instead. I think it's a bad trade. I'm not going to, keep on dancing on the grave of the trade. It's a bad one until, some surprise draft picks yield lovely, delicious fruit down the line. We'll see. But for now, stinks as a trade. I think the pointing and laughing at the Toronto Raptors if Pascal Siakam goes off in this series will be 1,000% justified. It's with the OG thing that I think it's a little more interesting. And, I think, yes, there will be a lot of people who will be like, wow, oh my God, I can't believe the Raptors traded that guy. Also, while kind of forgetting the 2-3 years of discourse where it was like, how are the Raptors hanging on to this guy? Oh my God, they just won't accept 3 first-round picks from the Grizzlies. What are these guys doing? They're hanging on to him too much. They're valuing him too highly. I think what we've seen so far in these playoffs and what with OG's done since joining the Knicks is that the Raptors were 1,000% correct to value OG Anunoby exceptionally highly and wait for the right trade to come along. And I still maintain, despite what we've seen OG do in the first round of the playoffs and the Raptors not currently playing basketball, that the trade was a home run for the Raptors considering the circumstances. It did not seem like OG Anunoby was going to be sticking around. There were, noises and rumors and whispers that he was on his way out this offseason, and the Raptors were either going to have to pay up and, just dole out a massive max contract at a time where maybe that didn't work for them and the direction of their team. Obviously the injury concerns hang over things as well. And OG, I think everyone saw this. He is a ceiling raiser, and the Raptors did not have a ceiling to be lifted up by OG Anunoby in the way the team was constructed before they traded him. Of course, the irony is that by trading OG Anunoby and acquiring Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett, and then later trading Pascal Siakam, the Raptors created a roster that would absolutely now be elevated in its ceiling by the presence of one OG Anunoby. Of course, that's not how this works. There is no Quickly and Barrett on this team if OG Anunoby's not traded, and I'm a hell of a lot more happy that they traded OG for those actual good basketball players than, speculative picks that were going to be sort of middling in nature from the Grizzlies or the Pacers or whomever else had offers on the table over the previous couple of years. And so, yes, it's funny and ironic that OG would be like the perfect player for this roster to tie the whole thing together. But I also just think it illuminates right now what OG's done in the playoffs, what Pascal's done in the playoffs. It really, I think, hammers home just how valuable those types of players are, just how on the money the Raptors were in the theorizing of Vision 6'9". They didn't execute it well because it's damn hard to execute that well because it depends on getting all of the players of a certain height and dimension who also have the requisite skills to play effective basketball, of which there are a very few number of players alive who do that. And in a league with 30 teams where player acquisition is not always in your control, it's very much luck and draft based and things like that. Just accruing all of the players to make sensible basketball out of guys who all are 6'8" or 6'9" just didn't seem tenable. But the core principle of, hey, these guys who are 6'8", 6'9", who have some ball skills, who can score, who can defend, who are long, they're kind of the future of the NBA. That was bang on. That was 100% correct. And we're seeing now the absence that the Raptors have of those types of players. And all we're going to see over the next couple of weeks with OG and Pascal, to me, is only going to continue to further hammer home the point that drafting wings and getting more wing talent on this team needs to be priority number 1, 2, and 3 for this front office this offseason. Look around the league. It's not just the Knicks or the Pacers who added wings in the form of Pascal who are finding success, right? The Wolves have Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards on their wings. Absolute menaces defensively. Edwards is his own ridiculous animal, of course, but McDaniels, the perfect type of connective wing player that all good teams have. Look at the Thunder, Jalen Williams, Lou Dort. Those guys are bloody incredible. The Knicks, of course, OG, Josh Hart. Look at the teams that crashed out miserably. It was the Miami Heat, whose best wing player was injured for the entire series in Jimmy Butler. It was the Philadelphia 76ers, whose best wing is like Tobias Harris, who's barely an NBA player anymore. Like that totally did them in. The lack of connective big wings on the Suns also rendered that team just kind of like an assemblage of talent and not an actual basketball team. Wings are the guys who tie together modern basketball teams. And again, for me, the Raptors, they're going to have 2 or 3 picks in this year's first round or first 31 picks. And I think it would be an absolutely justifiable, totally prudent decision to use every one of those picks on 6'8", 6'9", 6'7", spry, long, athletic wings, and just to see who can pop, who can become players, who tie together the overall picture that the Raptors are starting to put together. And look, they're on the right way. They have one of those guys in Scotty Barnes. I don't know if he necessarily profiles as like your typical wing stopper, but certainly 6'9", help side rim protection, all that stuff. Scotty Barnes is clearly a Vision 6'9" like player. There's a reason the Raptors valued him with the 4th overall pick back in 2021. Just going and taking as many players like that. And look, they've clearly had success taking players like this before with Pascal, with OG, with Scotty. I think, to me, if I'm just lining up the draft strategy, my like top 10 guys on the board are probably all going to be wings. And I think that would be a perfectly fine and frankly good way for the Raptors to go about approaching this year's draft. And so with that in mind, we will leave the OG Pascal bowl behind us. I don't know who I'm rooting for here. I just want both of them to succeed. I think I don't want to see like OG lock Pascal's ass down. I think that would bum me out. But barring that, just like both dudes have a nice series, I would be very, very content and happy with that. Maybe we get another 50 burger from Pascal at MSG or something. That'd be very cool. OG back in his old stomping grounds from college in Indiana. Fascinated to see how those guys are going to play. Super happy for them individually. Very sad they're not on the Toronto Raptors anymore. But of course, got to move on and look at guys who might fill those wing spots going forward. We'll do that coming up with a couple of guys, including Cody Williams, who thought I was maybe out on after my original viewings of him earlier on. I think I may be back in on Cody Williams being one of my favorite wing prospects in this draft. We'll get into why that is coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. And look, I have said this before, but Monopoly is one of my favorite board games. I'm not just saying it because Monopoly Go is sponsoring the podcast. No, I actually love Monopoly. Problem is, the closest people to me, my loved ones, my wife, my in-laws, who we see all the time, live nearby, they refuse to play Monopoly with me on a regular basis because I get too competitive with it. And we have a deal, every 4 years, February the 29th is Monopoly Day. That's it. We get one. It's in our calendars for the rest of time. But other than that, we just gotta, I gotta fill the gaps in between that with Monopoly Go. I can't be playing Monopoly just every 4 years. That's not going to give me my fix, baby. But with Monopoly Go, it's all of the fun little twists of the classic board game with a million new features that make it super fun. You can team up with friends or for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. Maybe the team element is something I can use to convince my in-laws to play Monopoly Go with me. I'm going to start working on that and make the sales pitch. Plus, with Monopoly Go, it's new. It feels exciting every single day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games as well, like digging for treasures or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, back at it here on your Friday edition of Locked On Raptors. Just a heads up, we missed Tuesday's episode, so I'm making it up with a Saturday episode, not a second Friday episode, a Saturday episode. I'm going to talk about some guards who might be worth reaching on for the Toronto Raptors at the 6th pick or higher if they keep it. Talk about Isaiah Collier, Devin Carter, a couple other guys. Jacoby Walter's going to be in the mix there too. So we'll talk about that Saturday. You have that to look forward to. But for now, let's get into Cody Williams, shall we? The 6'8", 7-foot wingspan wing out of Colorado, played with my dearly beloved Tristan da Silva, who we talked about earlier this week. If you want to go check that out, I believe from Wednesday's episode, talking about the very sort of complete do-it-all, jack-of-all trades, master of none that is Tristan da Silva. Cody Williams, bit of a different prospect, bit of a higher upside prospect for sure. Made the Pac-12 all-freshman team this past season. And of course, you may know, is the brother of the good Jalen Williams on the Oklahoma City Thunder. We've seen the incredible meteoric rise of that guy. That's not to say all members of the Williamses are going to become incredible future All-NBA players, but if you want to buy into that sort of juju, you certainly can. The stats on Cody Williams this past season, 11.9 points a game, 3 boards. Would like to see him grab some more rebounds, 1.6 assists, 59% on his twos, 41% from deep on pretty low volume, just 1.7 attempts from downtown. As far as where he's mocked right now, the Ringer has him 9th on their board. Ricky O'Donnell, who is, I think, my favorite overall college basketball and draft person, just in general over at SB Nation, has him 13th in his latest mock draft from earlier in April, and he's 10th on ESPN's most up-to-date mock draft as well. And, I think he's kind of floated in that top 10-ish range. There was a time there where he was being flirted with, is he going to be like a top 3 pick? Seems like that maybe dissipated after a pretty tough finish to his college season. He was kind of invisible both in Colorado's conference tournament and in the NCAA tournament, where Tristan da Silva certainly shone brightest of the 2 wing prospects coming out of Colorado. And I think because of what we saw in the tournament and the conference tournaments, that had me feeling not so good about Cody Williams. Like watching him live in those games, I was just kind of unimpressed. My eyes were always going more towards Da Silva, and I was just kind of like, I don't really get it. I see the dimensions. He's tall, he's long, but does he really bring a whole lot to the table? But if you watch the full breadth of his season, there is a lot to like here with Cody Williams. And I think, of all the wings we've talked about, he stands a chance of being one of the single best fits with what the Toronto Raptors are looking for from their wings going forward, because he kind of just has that really nice connective in-between game with some pretty interesting little elements that could, portend higher upside as well. I think the thing that really pops off is his touch and his feel. He's just got when he drives, he has this sort of knack of, he doesn't get all the way to the rim. He gets kind of to 4 or 5 feet. And then he has this sort of array of, bank shots and scoops and hook shots and things like that is pretty impressive. And there's just a ton of touch on them. Again, he shot 59% on his twos this season. That's a really good clip for a guy to have. And yeah, he's just he's a master of English and kind of putting balls up through traffic and getting it to just kind of delicately fall in the cup. I think that to me is probably the best part of his game. You combine that, he's got a pretty interesting handle for a guy his size. He's 6'8" again. He's very lanky, but I think that works to his benefit at times because he uses that length to kind of snake between little tight gaps between defenders, keep the ball, in his control. He's pretty upright while he does it. And maybe that's a thing you want to work on. He can kind of get knocked off his spot a little bit here and there. If he's not getting to the rim, he's not really pulling up from mid-range or anything like that. It's kind of an all or nothing situation right now. But when he gets to the rim, I think there's just a lot of really interesting touch there. You combine that with some playmaking chops. He's a guy who can grab and go on a defensive rebound, run your transition break for you. I've talked this week with a bunch of different guys who really excel in transition about the sort of excitement I have about the idea of adding more guys to this team that was already the number 1 transition team in basketball this past season, who doubled down on that strength. Why not be even a better number 1 transition team going forward? Hey, it's the place where the easiest buckets are scored. You have Scotty Barnes, who I think over the course of his career is likely going to be one of the, if not the best transition orchestrators in all of basketball. Why not get more guys who can help you absolutely be devastating on the run? Cody Williams would certainly fit that bill as well. And I think the passing chops from him are pretty interesting too. Just 1.6 assists. There were a lot of mouths to feed on that Colorado team. He was playing on the wings. He wasn't asked to carry a creation burden. Tristan da Silva had a little bit even more of that to his game than Williams did. But the passing touch, the feel for the game stuff, again, it's all right there. And I think there's some pretty interesting upside if he can kind of put it all together and become a second side attack creation guy, right? Seems like he'll totally fit into a Darko Rajakovic style of offense where he can make quick reads, he can make quick decisions, he can put the ball on the deck and make something happen. those are kind of the things you need when you're trying to play 0.5 basketball, when you're trying to play a system that is all about the next quick decision and being able to do something with the ball. It seems like Cody Williams has that to him. The sort of downside with him, I talked about the rebounding a little bit off the top, like just 3 rebounds a game for a guy who's 6'8". That's a little concerning. And the physicality and just the need for some meat on the bones is kind of, I think, a real thing with Cody Williams. That's not something that often worries me when I'm talking about a young guy in college or on the way into the NBA. Guys are skinny. Guys get taller. Guys get big, beefier. Guys beef up. The NBA has a way of putting you through physical regimens. Ask Grady Dick about that and how the Raptors basically saved his season by telling him to go work out more, basically. Obviously paraphrasing what actually happened there, but strength to me is something that I don't take too much concern with, especially, again, he's 6'8". He's got a 7-foot wingspan. He's got size. He'll fill out. And so I'm not too concerned there, but in sort of concert with the lankiness, he's pretty upright. He can kind of get knocked off his spot a little bit. Defensively, I think there's a lot there, but I think the balance needs to be worked on. The defensive stance needs to be a little wider, a little bit more classic. I think he kind of just relies almost too much on his length on defense right now and doesn't quite, use just like your traditional fundamental slide your feet defense and things like that. But the nice thing about him is a weird comparison that kind of came to mind with me watching him in this morning is, and it's not obviously a like for like comparison by any means, but because he's so long and because I think he uses his angles really well to like make up space and has like really good economy of movement, it kind of reminds me of Marc Gasol on the Raptors, kind of near the end of his career. Definitely wasn't so fleet of foot anymore, but because he just had such a great understanding of like how to use his length, how to use angles to deter shots and also get back to the roller, not be caught in no man's land too much. Obviously, Cody Williams not going to be asked to be like a drop pick and roll defender or anything like that, but I think just the similar knack for Marc Gasol back in his Raptors days to cover ground whilst being kind of slow, I think Cody Williams kind of has that as well. And I think that all, again, goes into the feel for the game. He just kind of seems to understand how things work, the space on the floor, the geometry of the court, and all of that. And it's pretty encouraging. I also just kind of like that he plays at his own pace. He's kind of got this sort of slow movement to him. He's not quite Kyle Anderson where he's going to, have a nickname created because he's slow, but he definitely has a bit more of a sort of in between offbeat sort of rhythm to his game. I think that could be a really nice compliment to the explosion of Scotty Barnes, the battering ram that is RJ Barrett flying around screens, the absolute lightning speed of Emmanuel Quickley. Having someone who's a little bit more in between speed-wise can kind of throw defenses off a little bit. Imagine like a drive from RJ Barrett where he's just gunning into the lane, kicks it over on the wing to a Williams, and he has more of this sort of slow, meandering drive. It's got to be hard for defenses to adjust to very different skill sets and play styles like that. And I think that could be a really nice piece. He also brings on-ball defense. I mentioned the stance not being amazing, but he's also enormous, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. He does have a pretty good knack for how to use his length to block shots and things like that. I'm pretty encouraged by what the defense will be and how he can sort of do the thing that I've talked about that I think is a necessity for whoever the long-term wing solution for this team is can he push RJ Barrett to the 2 and be like a classic, 3 on defense? And I think he certainly can do that, especially as he bulks up and improves that defensive footwork. The 3-point shot, I think, is still a question. He shot 42% from deep at school this year. It's really good. 1.7 attempts a game. It's just hard to really use that as a sample. I think the jump shot looks fine. Again, I'm no shot doctor. We'll talk tomorrow about a guy who's got a jump shot that is wacky and crazy in Devin Carter. I don't think Cody Williams has the Devin Carter jump shot. It's a real jump shot. And I feel pretty good about it being at least average, most likely. But, he's not going to be like a pull-up 3-point shooting guy. He's not going to be a movement shooter, at least right away. He's going to be your classic catch and shoot, knock him down when they come to him in the flow of the offense when he's at a standstill, similar to, say, RJ Barrett, for example. Pretty low volume, shot 40% as a Raptor. If you can get that from Cody Williams early, I think that's a pretty good starting point. When you layer that into the off-ball game or on-the-ball game he has, where he can put it on the deck and go and drive and score around the rim, I think there's something pretty interesting there with Cody Williams as a connective wing piece for this team. And so looking at him as like a pick at number 6 for the Raptors, if they stay there, for example, or if they jump higher up, I'm probably not taking him if they jump into the top 4, but if they're there at 6 and I think the one guy I'd say I like more than him of the wing class that I've talked about so far is Zachary Ricochet. Although I think I like the cool parts of Williams's game. My favorite parts of Williams's game I like more than my favorite parts of Ricochet, who's more of just kind of an all-around player. I think those two guys are a bit of a toss-up for me. I think I like him more than Ron Holland. It's close. Ron Holland's just such a crazy athlete, but I do think I'd be perfectly fine if they took him at 6, just for the connective tissue he could provide for this Raptors team. We'll come back on the other side. We'll get Dalton Knecht from Tennessee, an absolute bucket getter. Can he do much else, though? We'll get to that coming up to close out the show. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performances. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, wrapping things up here as we continue to look at wings who just might be there if, in fact, the Toronto Raptors keep their pick in the top 6. A refresher on the numbers. I know I've gone through the odds a million times, but maybe you forget. Maybe you want to be reminded. There is a 46% chance the Toronto Raptors will actually keep their pick. 54% chance they will not pick in the top 6 and defer their pick to the San Antonio Spurs. Again, my preferred outcome on lottery night, even with the short-term sting of not getting to pick a guy high this year. Turns out I don't love much of the dudes in the top part of this draft anyway, so it's fine. You'll still have 19, you still have 31, and that to me is plenty to work with in this draft. It's a couple of shots in a range of this draft that I actually kind of think there are more players I dig than there are in the upper reaches of this draft. It's a very bizarre draft. I still having a hard time putting my finger on it. Either way, there's a 9% chance they jump to 1, 2, 3, or 4, and like a 9% chance they stay at number 6. For argument's sake, while there is still a lack of clarity on where they will select, we will keep on operating as though they're just going to pick 6th, and we'll go from there until the lottery happens and we have some clarity. We can actually talk about the actual position they're picking in. Thanks, Masai and Bobby, for the month of confusion and being stuck in limbo. Let's get to it. Dalton Knecht, the 6'6" wing out of Tennessee, 23 years old. So on the older end of guys, was a junior college guy for a couple of years, played 2 years at Northern Colorado, and then wrapped up his college career this season at Tennessee, where he was really, really good. 22 points a game, 5 boards, 2 assists on 50% on 2s, 40% on 3s, 77% at the line. And it does seem, from all the people you read, all of the mock draft people, the Hoop Intellect over on YouTube, one of my absolute favorite YouTubers covering the draft and prospects. High floor seems to be the kind of consensus with Dalton Knecht. He's got a ton of shooting upside. Again, 40% from 3 at Tennessee this season. He's a catch and shoot guy. He's a movement shooter. Lots of examples on the Tennessee tape that you watch of him just kind of being run through a maze of screens, coming out clear on the other side and having a wide open triple. You can run a lot of stuff in a Darko Rajakovic offense for that type of offensive player. We saw it this year with Grady Dick, right? An excellent, excellent movement shooter who got sprung open for all kinds of good looks. Running off of Jakob Poeltl screens, running off of split actions, things like that. I think that's certainly the kind of niche that Dalton Knecht can occupy in the NBA as well. Hoop Intellect, our pal Keandre, who again will be on this podcast very soon from over on YouTube. He talked a lot about in his breakdown of Dalton Knecht. He's not like the fastest off-ball mover in the world. Like he's not like Steph Curry flying around like a maniac. Obviously, no one is. but Emmanuel Quickley, for example, as well, super fast mover away from the ball, gets to his spots really quickly, beats his defender, leaves them in the dust. Not quite the same thing with Dalton Knecht. That could be a bit of an issue with the movement shooting stuff in the pros, but it doesn't seem like a massive concern. There's two big questions with Dalton Knecht. One is defense, which we'll get to. The other is, like, is he ever going to be anything resembling the primary creator he kind of was at Tennessee, where he had the ball in his hands a ton? And I think it seems like that's probably not going to be the case. As like a scorer, as a creator, there's some stuff there. I think he has a hard time kind of breaking dudes down one-on-one. He kind of needs a screen to get him into an area of space where he can take advantage of, what is actually pretty interesting, like above the rim dunking athleticism. Dude can yam it. He's had a lot of pretty nasty highlight dunks from his college career. That's always a nice thing for me, a person who loves the art form of the slam dunk. I'm into that big time. But it does seem like he needs that screen to thrust him into space to make it happen. He's not going to break a dude down off the bounce, leave him in his dust, and go and dunk. And that's not a problem, right? It doesn't have to be a problem. The Raptors have Emmanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes. They are going to be the fulcrums of the offense going forward for many, many years, one would think. We know Jakob Poeltl, Kelly Olynyk do a lot of creation from the elbows. Like, they wouldn't be drafting Dalton Knecht, needing him to be some kind of on-ball creative force. But, if you're trying to project and if you're thinking about taking him at number 6, you're probably hoping there's a little bit more upside there as a creator. And I'm just not sure it's quite there for him. The passing doesn't seem to really be like a super honed skill for him. And I always kind of feel like passing is sort of just like the instincts of passing or something that's more just kind of naturally within a guy as opposed to something that can be really learned. Obviously, some guys defy that and learn to pass and become excellent playmakers over time. Think of a guy like DeMar DeRozan, for example, who was just kind of a one-minded tunnel vision scorer who, learned to become an excellent playmaker as time progressed. But that's, DeMar DeRozan is a pretty incredible development arc. And I think, baking in and expecting incredible development arcs is not maybe the best way to have the most success in the draft. Either way, I think he's probably not going to be much more than your sort of classic catch and shoot guy who can attack a closeout, or your odd sort of working with second units, use a guy in pick and roll actions to help him get going downhill. Like, I don't think he's going to go create something from nothing necessarily for you, which again, doesn't have to be a problem if the Raptors are taking him, but it's a consideration if you're taking him as high as number 6. The actual big concern here for Dalton Knecht is defense. He's just not going to be a good NBA defender, it seems. Yeah, he's 6'6". His arms don't seem super long. I don't think there's an actual measurement on his length, on his wingspan just yet. And he gives up just like a lot of blow-bys. The Raptors, of course, we know, love to give up blow-bys themselves. And so adding that to the mix, this is where the fit with the Raptors really falls apart for me. And again, I'll reiterate, I think fit has to be a consideration with every pick the Raptors are taking in this year's draft. It's a role player draft. There aren't clear, obvious offensive stars to be taken in this draft. There aren't clear, no-brainer guys who are going to go and be all-stars. You have to draft for fit, because what makes a role player a good role player is most often fit. And so with the Raptors set up the way they are, again, I think it's imperative they get wings on this team who can push RJ Barrett to the 2, so his lack of on-ball defense on the wing becomes less of a liability. You have someone there to soak up those big defensive assignments on the wing. And if you're drafting someone in the top 6, you're hopefully drafting them to become a starter for you one day. And I don't see a world in which you draft Dalton Knecht and he becomes that lockdown wing defender for you. He is then like dependent on RJ Barrett figuring out the defense thing that he hasn't figured out yet to really become viable in, what would in theory be starting lineups for the Raptors going forward. And to me, that is where it just does not compute for me. I think we've obviously seen the Raptors have taken non-defenders before. They took Grady Dick just a year ago, but I think in a different way. Like Grady Dick, he is like such a good off-ball defender. He's so smart about where to be. I think he's going to end up actually being a positive team defender, even if his on-ball defense is always a bit of a struggle. Don't quite see that same level of just sort of off-ball intuition with Dalton Knecht from what I've seen. And Grady Dick's also just like a lot bigger, right? He's like 6'8", 6'9". He's pretty long. He can get into those passing lanes a lot easier than a guy who's 6'6" and maybe 6'5". I don't know. I don't know if I quite trust that Dalton Knecht is a full 6'6". He doesn't have the wingspan. And so I don't think he sort of has the same track of, okay, maybe not a great on-ball defender, but he can be an excellent team defender for you the way Grady Dick, I think, is eventually going to become. And so I don't quite see it as a fit with this Raptors team. He can certainly be like a connective passer and things like that and on offense and, kind of fill the gaps on offense. But defensively, I think it just does not make sense for this Raptors team to use such a high pick on a guy like Dalton Knecht. And a little food for thought as well. It's not like a super long history of 23-year-olds guys going in the lottery, but our pal Hoopin-elect Keandre did run off a list of some guys in recent years who were 23 years or older and taken in the lottery. You're looking at guys like Ochai Agbaji, Davion Mitchell, Denzel Valentine, not in the NBA anymore, Frank Kaminsky, Obi Toppin, he's fine. Cam Johnson, pretty good, but also, kind of is capped out as like a pretty decent, okay player. For that reason, I think I'd be pretty disappointed if the Raptors took Dalton Knecht at 6, right? Like if he's there at 19, he stumbles all the way there. Sure, you take a look at it just because of the talent and the scoring chops, but I don't think he'll be there at number 19, number 1. And I just doesn't quite work for me as a guy at the number 6 spot. There are going to be higher upside players and wings who project to be more connective, tied all together type players like the OGs and Pascals, particularly the OGs we talked about off the top of this show. With that, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We'll be back again with a special Saturday episode to make up for the missed episode on Tuesday, where we will talk about guards who just might be worth reaching on. Isaiah Collier, Jacoby Walter, and Devin Carter. You have that to look forward to on Saturday. In the meantime, thanks so much. Thanks for subscribing, following, rating, reviewing, telling a friend. It's always very much appreciated when you support the show, however you support the show. And we will talk to you very, very soon. You're all the best. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. I usually have the basketball to shoot on the net, but I forgot it today. Sorry. Bye.